The following episode can be viewed on the YouTube channel Bernie or Bust Television.
Good morning, USA, and welcome to another episode of the Bernie or Bust Show. What we can assume going forward is that the fuckery will not diminish but increase. Pledges are coming in for Bernie or Bust because of this fuckery, and I think that the power of the people will be heard if enough of us band together and say we will not vote for your corporate candidate, no matter who. Therefore, one of the primary jobs of the Bernie or Bust Show is to make it clear what this fuckery is doing on a day-to-day basis. So I'll keep you apprised of all the shenanigans and twists of fate, and then we'll figure out together what to do about it. What I hope we'll decide to do is to spread the word that the shenanigans are not going away and that the appropriate response is Bernie or Bust. Together we can make it clear that people should take the Bernie or Bust pledge at BernieOrBust219.us, and we should then work together to make sure that the word gets spread that enough of us are Bernie or Bust that there isn't any possibility that anyone but Bernie can beat Donald Trump. So for a positive look as to how things are going, let's look to Lauren Martinchek on Medium. I regularly feature her articles on the Bernie or Bust Show. Even if they win this battle, we'll still win the war. Iowa reaffirmed everything I despise about the Democratic Party, but they have no idea what they're dealing with. Amen, sister. Whether it was quality control concerns, the crash of the app designed to report precinct results, or the Buttigieg campaign with ties to the company that developed the app declaring him the victor in the aftermath, the Iowa caucus was an absolute embarrassment. Going to bed with persistent chest pain at just nearly 25 years old because of the high blood pressure I experienced throughout the evening was the cherry on top of a miserable night. A night that reaffirmed everything I have come to despise about the Democratic Party and the DNC. I do not care to rehash exactly what happened again. We're watching in real time as our democratic process dies in the daylight. I do not care to go over once more all the ways that the process broke down last night. All I know is that in no uncertain terms, at the end of the day, what's going on in Iowa has only increased my anger and made me even more motivated. We're going to have a word from Caitlin Johnstone in a moment about anger and how that can be a good thing in this situation. The DNC and the Democratic Party can play their cute little games right now. They can do everything they can to subvert the will of the people, disenfranchise us, and destroy the last shred of faith we have in the process. But Bernie Sanders isn't going anywhere, and neither is the movement we have built. They may have denied him his victory speech and given Buttigieg not one but two chances to parade around like the victor, but it is Bernie ahead in the popular vote in Iowa and still potentially winning the majority of delegates as well once all the precincts have reported. And that is actually what did happen. Bernie won everything, every metric. It is Bernie so far ahead in New Hampshire that other candidates may not even get a delegate there. It is Bernie in the lead while Biden free falls in such an epic fashion even I couldn't have dreamed of a defeat that drastic. It is Bernie on track to win California, and it is Bernie with the most grassroots donors and volunteers. Nate Silver even has Bernie almost sweeping Super Tuesday, which is an aside. They may be doing everything they can to win this battle, or even just give the impression that they have, but make no mistake, we will win the war, and we're coming for the Democratic Party and the DNC. That's a good way to get over your high blood pressure. To me, that righteous anger makes my blood pressure go down when I realize that the DNC is finally going to get what's coming to them. And that includes the party machinery in Iowa. It's pretty clear to me that the corruption is rampant in the state of Iowa with the party leaders there. So back to Lauren. It is clear based on how they continue to operate that the Democratic establishment genuinely thinks chaos like this will deter people from getting involved in the process, and that shows just how little they understand what is happening. This anger isn't going to make us stay home. It just radicalized us against them even further. Bernie or bust! Bernie or bust! I've already seen tweets about DSA chapters using what happened in Iowa as a potential way to recruit more members. I have already seen tweets reminding people that this is just proof of what Bernie and his base have been saying all along and urging people to get involved in order to create the change that will stop this madness once and for all. If you see this, Lauren, please go on Twitter, I know you're already on there, and make sure that Bernie or Bust is trending. If you're trying to think of what to say next time you're angry, please mention the Bernie or Bust movement. As Bernie said, we are their worst nightmare. Change is coming, whether they like it or not. We might be angry, sad even, but we are not in 2016 anymore. We are prepared, we are organized and ready. We will win. Also, Lauren, I hope you get a chance to read this piece by Kate Johnstone, The Myth of Incompetence. DNC scandals are a feature, not a bug. The Iowa caucus scandal has continued to get more egregious by the hour, with new revelations routinely pouring in about extremely suspicious manipulations taking place, which all just so happen to disadvantage the campaign of Bernie Sanders in the first Democratic electoral contest of 2020. By the time you read this article, there will likely have been more. Following the failure of an extremely shady app developed by vocally anti-Sanders establishment insiders, which reportedly was literally altering vote count numbers after they were entered, Black Hawk County Supervisor Chris Schwartz shared the election results in his county on Facebook so the public could have some idea of what's going on as the Iowa Democratic Party, IDP, slowly trickles out the results of the caucuses. This tweet is from @LibCrusher. The IDP is now reporting vote totals from Black Hawk County that are at odds with what Black Hawk County themselves have reported. Folks, I don't know what is going on with the Iowa Democratic Party and the slow trickle of results. I know for a fact that they have had the count from Black Hawk County for over 24 hours and will not clearly explain to anyone, not even me as an elected official, what the process is for releasing our results. I do not understand why these complete results were not released yesterday, and the leadership of the Iowa Democratic Party will not tell me. This is not a reflection on our hard-working party leaders like Vicki Brown, who are being left out in the cold just as much as you and me, and those who worked very hard this whole caucus season. Sanders supporters quickly highlighted the fact that the IDP's reported numbers for Black Hawk County were wildly different from those reported by Schwartz, with votes taken from Sanders and given to minor fringe candidates Deval Patrick and Tom Steyer. The IDP then announced that it would be making a minor correction to the last batch of results, which just so happened to be in Black Hawk County and just so happened to give Sanders back some votes, but still remains different from that reported by Schwartz. It's probable that this only happened as a result of one Black Hawk County supervisor taking to social media to report the vote tallies for this one particular county. What about all the Iowa locations where this did not happen and local Democratic Party officials didn't report their numbers on social media? Does anyone actually believe that the one instance where the IDP got caught is the one instance in which such vote tampering occurred? That would be a very silly belief to hold, in my opinion. It would be like a store clerk discovering that a can of beans is completely rotten, then going ahead and putting the rest of the pallet on the shelf under the assumption that the other cans are fine. Another of the countless revelations hemorrhaging from this fustercluck is a report from CNN and the New York Post that the DNC, not the IDP, is running the show in managing the Iowa caucus scandal. This means that this Democratic presidential primary scandal is being managed by the same committee which orchestrated the last Democratic presidential primary scandal, and that the campaign being victimized by this scandal, that of Bernie Sanders, is the same in both cases. This would be the same DNC whose chairperson, Tom Perez, recently stacked its nominating committee with dozens of odious alt-centrist establishment insiders who are ideologically opposed to Sanders in every meaningful way. Democratic National Committee Chair Tom Perez has nominated dozens of lobbyists, corporate consultants, think tank board members, and former officials linked to the presidential campaigns of Barack Obama and Bill and Hillary Clinton to serve on the Democratic National Convention, DNC, nominating committee this July, Kevin Gosztola reported for Gray Zone last month. Many of Perez's nominees are vocal opponents of Senator Bernie Sanders and spoke out against his campaign when he challenged Hillary Clinton for the nomination in 2016. John Podesta is in the Rules Committee, for Christ's sake. This is a tweet by Jordan Cheriton. There you have it. At CNN just reported the at DNC is running the show on the release and handling of the Iowa caucus results. It now makes perfect sense why results have been released this way, which just so happened to make at Pete Buttigieg look like the winner for 2 days. Just so happened. Back to Kate. As these scandalous revelations continue to emerge, I don't see anyone online expressing surprise that the Democratic establishment is once again stacking the deck against Sanders, but I do see some people expressing surprise that they are being so brazen about it, which is perfectly understandable. If this party wants to screw over progressive voters, you'd expect that they'd at least try to hide it a little bit so they don't alienate their progressive base before November. The flaw in this expectation is its premise that Democratic Party elites care if their party wins in November. They do not. Put yourself in the shoes of one of the leading movers and shakers within the Democratic Party for a minute. Pretend you're getting a nice paycheck, pretend you're getting great healthcare benefits, pretend you get plenty of prestige and exclusive access and invitations to classy parties, and pretend you're the type of person who's willing to manipulate and deceive and kiss up and kick down and do whatever it takes to get to the top of such a structure. Now ask yourself, if you were such a person in such a situation, would you care if voters picked Donald Trump or Pete Buttigieg in November? Would it affect your cushy lifestyle in any way whatsoever? Would you lose your job, your prestige, or your influence? No party elites lost those things in 2016. Why would you expect this time to be any different? But you might be at risk of losing your cushy lifestyle if a forcefully anti-elitist progressive movement gets off the ground and takes control of your party. So you'd stand everything to gain by doing everything you can to prevent that from happening, and because you don't care if Trump gets reelected, you'd stand absolutely nothing to lose. Here's an aside. As we pivot towards defeating Donald Trump in November, the Republican insiders have the same situation as the Democratic insiders. The same comfortable people that are propping up the DNC pretty much are propping up the Republicans, the kinds of people I know, even in my own family, who are hiding behind their privilege, have a bias against regular working class people. It looks the same to me. The comfortable suburbanites, either Democratic or Republican, they don't look that much different. And they're propping up the establishment for the same reason. So we have sycophantic corporate crony suburbanites propping up the establishment in both parties. And I think the criticisms against them are going to be the same in both cases. You don't give an actual fuck about working class people. And that's where Bernie is going to stomp on them, because there are a lot of Republican voters, in swing states especially, who agree that neither party has done anything useful. And they agree that neither party has done anything that will help with economic injustice. So if the battle lines are drawn along class lines, then this is going to be pretty predictable. It's going to be a faux populist versus a real populist, and let the better populist win. So back to Kate. These people do not care if Trump gets reelected because they lose nothing if he does. The only people who stand anything to lose are the ordinary citizens who are suffering under a corrupt status quo of soul-crushing neoliberalism and increasing authoritarianism, many of whom currently support Sanders. Democratic Party elites are perfectly happy to keep shrieking about Russia for another 4 years while making sure that the status quo, which rewards their manipulative behavior, remains intact, and ensuring that they never wind up like those poor suckers out there who are suffering from poverty and lack of health care. And again, that sounds just like the Republican insiders too, the party establishment insiders of the Republican Party. And everything I just said is equally true of the media class, who are currently working in conjunction with the DNC's shenanigans to spin Pete Buttigieg as the clear winner of the party's first presidential electoral contest. They enjoy all the same perks and move in many of the same circles as Democratic Party elites, and it's all conditioned on their protection of the status quo. Here's a tweet from @FairMediaWatch. How corporate media make Pete look like he's winning. Back to Kate. I keep seeing the word incompetence thrown around. Gosh, these Democratic Party leaders are so incompetent, they say. How can anyone be so bad at their job? Well, they are not bad at their job. They are very, very good at their job. It's just that their job isn't what most people assume it is. Their job is not to win elections and garner public support. Their job is to ensure the perpetuation of the status quo, which rewards them so handsomely for their malignant behavior. Toward this end, they are not incompetent at all. They know exactly what they're doing, and they're doing it well. They are extremely competent. Depraved, certainly. Sociopathic, possibly, but not incompetent. They're happy to make their nefariousness look like incompetence, though, whenever they can get away with it. Any manipulator worth their salt always will be. If they can make their planned, deliberate acts of sabotage look like innocent little oopsies, they'll gladly do so. But you learn in life that whenever you see someone making a lot of, quote, mistakes, which just so happen to benefit them every time, you're dealing with manipulation, not incompetence. What do the bad guys say in the movies when they order someone's murder? They say, make it look like an accident. If it's an accident, you've got no trouble. You won't be seen for what you are. But of course it's no accident, and anyone with clear eyes and good intentions sees this. If you see someone working hard to make you believe that it's incompetence, you are dealing with someone who is invested in maintaining the status quo in some way. You are being manipulated. The system isn't broken, it's working exactly the way it's intended to work. It ain't a bug, it's a feature. And that feature will remain in operation until the entire sick system is torn down and replaced with something healthy. Crystal Ball bulldozes CNN and dismantles their anti-Bernie Sanders narrative. This is from the Progressive Voice.
On the other hand, probably the biggest story coming out of this and the biggest beneficiary of this whole debacle is Joe Biden, whose support has completely collapsed. And here's a metric that hasn't gotten a lot of attention. Yes, Iowa is an overwhelmingly white state, but I don't want to erase the voters of color who are in fact there. It looks at this point that Joe Biden did not win a single majority African-American precinct, and Bernie Sanders was actually dominant with voters of color. 43% of voters of color went to Bernie Sanders, far outpacing any of his rivals. So when you look at who has the coalition to go the distance, those early indications look like demographics are lining up well for Senator Sanders.
So she did a really great job there, per usual. I definitely liked many of her points. And the first point she makes about the popular vote actually is kind of crucial. Although we don't even really have to make that argument. Now, the thing is that Bernie Sanders has demolished in the popular vote. In the first round, I believe right now he's up by like 4,000 or 6,000 votes. And then in the final, he's up by less. I think it was like 2,000 or something like that, somewhere around there. So he's winning pretty like strongly in terms of the popular vote. It's not all that close. But even with the state equivalent delegates now, and I know that these results for the satellite caucuses came out after Crystal Ball was on CNN, but he's actually going to lose the SDE count as well, the state equivalent delegates. State delegate equivalent, that count is going to be lost by Pete Buttigieg. He's going to lose it. So Bernie's going to clean sweep. He's going to win in first round voting, final round voting, and he's also going to win in a state equivalent, state delegate equivalent count.
So Bernie cleaned Mayor Pete's clock in every category of voting in Iowa. Let the gloating begin. But if you do tell the truth about the results in Iowa in a way that might be a little bit less than polite, be expecting the bitch slapping to ensue. Here's another article from Kate Johnstone. Only assholes bitch about Sanders supporters being rude online. And this bitching, by the way, is going to continue when we start to confront Republicans about why Bernie Sanders is better as a populist than Donald Trump is. The Iowa caucuses are currently underway as of this writing. Regardless of the results, we will inevitably see an increase in tensions on social media between progressives and the status quo supporting pundit class, which will result in even more hysterical shrieking about mean, angry Bernie bros from the latter. They will whine, they will concern troll, they will claim that the online impoliteness of rank-and-file progressives is harming the Democrats and helping Trump, and they will pour an increasing amount of energy into increasingly melodramatic displays of victimhood. This will be intensely stupid. It will be intensely stupid for a number of reasons. Firstly, it's ridiculous for any grown adult to lose their shit over people criticizing them on the internet, even if those criticisms are numerous and harsh. If you can't handle criticism, don't shout your political opinions on giant social media platforms. If you're a professional political commentator, it's vastly more ridiculous since you chose to share your political perspective as your literal job. Grow the fuck up, dipshit. Here is a cartoon. It's got some normal people on the side saying good things, and then it's got this monstrous person on the other panel saying, Bernie is terrorist and gay, and in 10th place, he kicked a dog. And then it's got the reasonable people saying, shut up. And then there's another troll that says, I see the Twitter mob has gotten a hold of this one. A word of advice. This pattern of abuse might not help bring voters to your side. Funny how it's always only one candidate's base that reacts this way at the slightest criticism. No, there is not some vast conspiracy against your dear leader. Maybe your candidate simply isn't as strong as you think he is. Many in the circle have had to deal with ceaseless blah 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 blah. And again, the appropriate answer is, shut up! I think maybe one of the reasons the blue check-marked commentariat are so shocked and appalled by the backlash they receive when they smear Bernie Sanders online is due to the fact that both social media and the progressive movement are still relatively new. Until fairly recently, a pundit would just tell the riffraff how to think without ever having to worry about them talking back. Seeing their spin jobs attacked by insolent commenters is a new development. Which is why this pundit class has been successfully lobbying Twitter to create options which allow them to hide replies or forbid comments altogether. Or in my case, Alan Howell on Twitter, they just suspended my account when I was criticizing Elizabeth Warren to other Bernie or busters. And I still don't have my account back. So that's another way to do it. The second thing that makes the shrieking about angry Bernie bros insufferably stupid is that lives are literally on the line here. People are dying. They are dying due to lack of health care. They are dying due to poverty. They are dying in police violence. They are dying in wars. And here's this coordinated class of spinmeisters in their ivory towers babbling about ponies and unicorns and electability. It is absolutely okay for a victim of the status quo to be rude to its defenders. I mean, how disgustingly entitled can you get? What kind of weird, isolated, privileged life have you been living where you think it's reasonable to condescendingly tell the working class that it's unrealistic of them to want to stay alive instead of dying as a result of America's uniquely awful healthcare system, and then bitch and moan when they tell you off? You may as well be shouting down from your marble balcony telling the unwashed masses to die more quietly. Fuck off. Here's a tweet from Kate. Hi, my name's Snooty McCentrist. I understand that people are dying from wars and poverty and lack of health care, but could you please die more quietly and politely? Your angry tweets make me uncomfortable. Thirdly, and perhaps most importantly, anger is the perfect tool for killing off all sympathy and loyalties to manipulators and their deceitful narrative management. Let me explain. The other day, I heard a ruckus next door and went outside to see a man chasing a frightened woman around the back of their apartment. She was yelling at him to leave, and he was spouting some bullshit about how she was attacking him. Finally, I heard her say, "You've breached," meaning he'd violated his restraining order. After hearing that, I yelled some stuff at the guy, and he scuttled off like the parasite he is. But what stuck with me was the way the woman said, "You've breached." She didn't say it in a threatening way, as in, I'm going to call the police and send you to jail. She was trying to protect him. She was trying to warn him that he was about to set off a chain of consequences that she wouldn't be able to shield him from. Like she normally does. Like so many abuse victims normally do. Anyone who's escaped a relationship with an abusive manipulator will immediately know what I'm talking about. In such a relationship, you quickly learn that anything that happens to the abuser will be blamed on you, and you will be made to pay for it in any number of painful ways. This causes you to develop a Stockholm Syndrome-like mentality where you sympathize with your abuser in order to compartmentalize away from the stress of being constantly under fire in this way, and you find yourself working to shelter them from the consequences of their actions. I've seen that happen firsthand, let me tell you. The trouble with experiencing this sympathy, apart from the obvious, is that sympathy makes a wonderful adhesive for belief. When you sympathize with someone, you are more likely to believe the narratives they give you about what's going on. This is why so many of them play the victim, like the way my neighbor's ex claimed he was being attacked while menacingly chasing after a woman much smaller than himself, and the way establishment narrative managers claim they are being bullied and harassed by the victims of the status quo they work to defend. This has happened with me with members of my own family, where they're bullying because they want to keep the status quo in place that protects them and their privilege. They're the bullies, and then they call me a bully because I use anger and righteous indignation against their bullying. That's happened very close to home lately, to me. I just love Kate Johnstone. She has so many accurate ways of framing things, that get around the bullshit, the narrative management that she decries all the time. She's just amazing. You'll notice too that these establishment manipulators always use victimhood narratives designed to appeal to soft-hearted leftists. That's going to happen even more when we get to the general election race. The completely false Bernie bro myth works to spin Sanders supporters as a bunch of aggressive, straight white male dude bros attacking women and people of color online who support centrist candidates. Racism and misogyny are things that progressives are naturally sensitive to and want to stay away from. The bogus narrative is designed to hook into their pre-existing sympathies. Whether it be from a significant other, a parent, or a cult leader, anyone who has escaped from the mental prison of an adept manipulator eventually learns that anger is the only way to kill off the sympathy hooks which can be used to draw you back into the relationship. Replacing your sympathy with anger is like a white-hot fire which burns off any purchase a manipulator might find in your mind to lure you back into believing their stories about you, about them, and about what's really happening. Bernie supporters have gotten very good at giving bad faith manipulators their anger instead of their sympathy. In 2015, it wasn't uncommon to see such manipulators receiving calm, rational responses to their smears, explaining that Bernie is not actually an evil, unelectable Marxist who hates women and loves rape. Now in 2020, such smears receive a mountain of fuck-offs from grizzled veterans who understand exactly what game is being played here. They do not extend their sympathy to people who are trying to manipulate how they think, and rightly so. Me voting for Bernie in 2016, me voting Bernie 2020. Anyone who objects to this is either an idiot or a manipulator, or perhaps both. There is no legitimate reason for anyone to try and manipulate ordinary human beings away from expressing anger about an infuriating situation, and anyone who tries to do so is just showing you their true face. Reminds me of some of the people I work with. This is really good advice for people who work with nice, thoughtful, gentle souls who are manipulating them, because they're the ones who can get away with it the best. This is just such good advice for life and for political commentary. So good job, Kate. Please keep up the good work.
Get on board the Bernie bus train. Get on board the Bernie bus train. Once you hear that clickety-clack, there ain't no time for turning back. Oh, get on board the Bernie bus train.
The preceding episode can be viewed on the YouTube channel Bernie or Bust Television.